All right, my friends. I wanted to make a separate segment today to talk a little bit about how you can actually learn from the pros. Thanks to social media, what you see isn't always reality. And this starts from the fact that right now it's NBA draft combine stuff going on. And you see people's highlight tapes and mixtapes, and they say, oh, this guy's pro ready, or this person's in his bag, or whatever. And the younger version of me fell for that. You know, you need to do this, do that, look at this move, that move. What you're shown isn't really the truth. What I mean by that is you'll see cool things, but those cool things aren't always what makes a pro good. So we're going to talk about two Hall of Famers here, future Hall of Famers, two very good basketball players, get paid lots of money at the professional level. And you can learn a lot from the pros by actually diving in deeper. And we're going to dive into some little bit of analytics and stuff, but this helps you as a player. So we'll just talk about these two players first, and then we'll talk about how this affects me. So I got my stats on my phone. I'll pull it up. I'll put the names in the title, so whatever. It's Luka Doncic and Klay Thompson. This is this year's numbers, by the way. We'll start with Klay. So number of shots, specifically we're going to get three-pointers attempted, because that's what Klay's a specialist of. I think he shot 38.7% this year, which is phenomenal, by the way, even though people thought it was a down year. Still very impressive. 549 of his three-point field goal attempts came off of 0 dribbles. 0. Nada. 27 came off of 1 dribble. 7 came off of 2 dribbles. 9 came off of 3 to 6 dribbles. And 7 plus came off of, let me take a step back. I said that all backwards. First time reading stats live. Through 549 three-point attempts, were off of 0 dribbles. 64 were off of 1 dribble. 17 were off of 2 dribbles. 25 attempts were off of 3 to 6 dribbles. And 10 attempts were off of 7 plus dribbles. Those first category I was reading you were the number actually made. So he made, 210 threes out of 549 attempts off of 0 dribbles. 0. What bag was he getting into? Well, you watch this stuff on the highlights. Well, if you're a player like Klay Thompson, who is a shooter, who is I don't call him a specialist because he's very good at the entire game of basketball. A specialist is someone who might come in just for one specific role. Klay Thompson does not just come into the game for 10 minutes and do something very special. Sam Merrill, for those of you familiar with basketball, might be more of a specialist because he's like an extreme three-point shooter and maybe has some arguable deficiencies in other areas. So let's leave Klay Thompson there for now. Let's talk about Luka really quick. Luka, this is field goals attempted, by the way. The number of field goals attempted off of 0 dribbles was 198. This includes 2-pointers and 3-pointers. Number of field goals off of 1 dribble, 129 attempts. Off of 2 dribbles, 125 attempts. Off of 3 to 6 dribbles, 492 field goal attempts. And off of 7 plus dribbles, 683 field goal attempts. That's ridiculous, right? The large majority of his shooting comes off of 3 plus dribbles. So his game is a certain type of game, while Klay Thompson has a different type of game. Both are going to be Hall of Famers. Both are extremely successful basketball players. If I were to just watch Luka and I go, oh, I want to be like Luka Doncic, you have to remember, you have to put the context to it. And that is, am I going to get 7 plus dribbles a game? Am I going to be the focal point that gets that many dribbles? And if I'm not going to be, maybe working on those qualities is a complete waste of time. I don't say you shouldn't dribble the basketball, but the reason why Klay Thompson dribbles a basketball is very different than the reason why Luka dribbles a basketball. The way Klay comes off a screen or a pin down action is very different. And people will argue, oh, but Luka should do what Klay's doing more, and that would make him better. And Klay would be a better basketball player if he could dribble more. These are both Hall of Famers. You're arguing over stuff that is irrelevant, because if Klay were to spend more time dribbling the basketball and practicing that, then he wouldn't be such a great shooter. For example, let's go into Luka a little bit further. These are field goal attempts. This includes 2 and 3-pointers. Field goal attempts off of a catch and shoot. 143 field goal attempts. That includes 2s and 3s. Off the dribble, so they consider this pull-ups, 992 field goal attempts. 992. And then less than 10 feet. So pull-up, I assume, is between 10 feet and beyond off the dribble. Less than 10 feet, 479. He basically shoots everything off the move. Catch and shoot is minimal. Even in like his 2-point catch and shoot stuff, which nowadays isn't really a thing, but used to be back when I played, is like minuscule. So the whole point of this I'm trying to get at is when you watch a professional basketball player play, don't just watch their highlights, because you'll gravitate towards that. Understand what makes them effective. And the reason why this can help you, let's talk about it in my terms, is I am never going to be Luka Doncic. I'm never going to be that, and regardless of whatever league I attempt to play in. I want to make a professional basketball roster. There's a very low chance I'm dribbling the basketball 7+ times. However, I can still be an all-star Hall of Famer playing like Klay Thompson, an extremely successful basketball player who is effective in a different way. So you have different categories and profiles of athletes. So if we judge an athlete or a basketball player or your own abilities based on someone who's not a reasonable comparison to your strengths, then you're not actually going to really take much away from that player in terms of how their game can directly affect you if you're just looking at surface level highlights. If you dive a little bit deeper, sure, you can learn some stuff. Like I could learn a lot from Luka Doncic's vision, how he passes the ball, how he reads certain actions. But just watching him take 7 dribbles and shoot a fadeaway probably isn't a skill set I'm going to use. So you should try to find a comparison to yourself. And then someone maybe who actually has a skill set that you desire to learn from. Like you're trying to learn passing ability, you can dive in and see what kind of passes they make and how they make those passes, because the pass Klay Thompson makes off of a screen is very different than the pass Luka Doncic makes when he drives right and swings it over his head to an open offensive player. So this is really important for you young athletes, for myself, for anyone who wants to try and achieve something, is you have to find a way to be successful. And there's many routes to be successful. At a certain point in time, you're going to have to make somewhat of a bet that your best route is in this direction. For me, my best route is the shooting ability. So I create mismatches because I can shoot the basketball really well. That forces the defense to guard me closer relative to a lesser shooter. And in doing so, it changes the geometry of the court. My presence alone might help my point guard or my big man get open because a defender has to take 1 step closer to me. So it literally changes the geometry of the basketball. And if you're a nerd, they call that gravity, because in a way it changes how positional pieces on the court, the defense has to line up and they're drawn more closely to me by default. Make or miss, they have to respect my existence. And doing that, they also will respect the fact that if I catch the ball, you got to close out quicker. So unlike Luka Doncic, who has to take a lot of dribbles maybe to get open, because as we read, he doesn't shoot many catch and shoot shots, and the defense knows that. If the defense knows you shoot a lot of catch and shoot shots, like Klay Thompson, they're going to close out fast. And because of that, your read has to be attacking that closeout. Versus Luka's read might be very different. Maybe put the ball on the floor, dribble a lot, get a switch on a ball screen, and get a mismatch. Both involve dribbling the basketball, both involve reading the defense, but they're both stemming from very different places. So I'll dive into more of these as we go forward. Different players, different discussions, the importance of understanding some of these analytics, understanding spots on the floor, understanding where you're going to get your shots from. Because while basketball seems to be very simple on the surface level, you dribble a basketball, you score a basketball, you pass a basketball, the actual intricacies of the game is very, very different than I think what most people see in the realm of the highlight world. So I wanted to share that with you. Again, two amazing basketball players, two Hall of Famers, but how we can actually learn from professional basketball players and take that information and apply it to myself. And I can say, oh, I have that skill set. What player is kind of like that? How do they find out, or how they find ways to be successful? Then how can I use that information about how they're successful and figure out how I can make myself successful based on that information? I hope that makes sense. So a little bit of a different episode here today, but this is how I break down some of the higher level understandings of basketball to help make myself better and in turn shape my programming, because I find a comparison to someone else and I say, that might be a good fit for me. Let's work on some of those qualities that they have found successful and other people who are similar to that person have found successful, so I too can be successful. Appreciate you guys. Hope that makes sense.